We live? I am now. Welcome to the, what month is it? May. We already had one in May. Please, I ask for your grace today. We'll be out of here by noon for sure. I need to be somewhere, and I don't think that'll be a problem. But just to let everybody know, super duper hard stop for sure. Preferably a little before noon. But welcome to the second May Policy and Equity Committee meeting. We'll begin with a quick round of introductions, starting with our friend over here. Sam, hit your button so we can hear you. It's the most important thing I'll teach you today.
Oh, I'm Sam. I'm the legal intern this summer.
Awesome. Is that the interim superintendent? I can't see in there. Or is that Jen? Hey, come on up. You have a seat up here, interim superintendent. All right, I'm just gonna leave these on for a minute. Please pardon me. I have an eye and a nose issue. I'm doing great today, I promise. So I have to wear these sunglasses. I'm not trying to look cool. Next.
Stephanie Scott, Assistant General Counsel.
Dan Hoying, General Counsel.
Mike Morosky, board member.
Shauna Murphy, Interim Superintendent.
All right. And we have a number of guests in the audience. Thank you all so much for being here. We're going to begin. We have a couple alcohol waivers. I need a quorum. I don't know if my colleagues quit the policy committee, but we need a quorum to move on the alcohol waiver. We can hear from folks if they're here, Rob, for the School for the Creative and Performing Arts first, and then the Rothenberg Preparatory Academy. So I will just ask that the SCPA folks requesting the alcohol waiver just sort of tell us what it's for, and you need not take longer than a minute or two. Not trying to rush you, but just kind of let us know what you're up to. We'd love to hear about the hospice program or the benefit. There's nobody online. How about Rosenberg? We're doing great. And this is Phyllis Davis. She makes sure that we don't fall off a bridge or step in front of a train. Thank you, Phyllis. So how's everyone doing? Yeah, okay, great. It's going great. All right, we have somebody from Rothenberg.
I'm here.
All right, take it away, Rothenberg. Let's hear the dad. Oh, there he is, Mr. Stallings. Good to see you, sir. Tell us about this awesome event and what you're requesting.
Absolutely, and I'm honored to be brief. So we are having a brunch to celebrate some of our mentors who have been effective in helping us to service kids around the city, including those that we service as CPS. Also inviting them to bring a few friends with them as we hope to deepen our pool of mentors. So we're just requesting the use of the rooftop for a brunch, and the alcohol will probably have mimosas or something like that to ply people into submission.
Sounds like a good plan, Mr. Stallings. The dad initiative, I happen to know a good bit about it. It's awesome, and also know a good bit about that rooftop. It's a great place for it. I don't have any questions for you aside from that. Miss Mapp, this is Miss Mapp, my wonderful colleague to my left, your right. Do you have any questions for Mr. Stallings?
Morning. I don't at the moment, but thank you for joining us today and sharing more information about the DAD initiative. And so yeah, I don't have any questions, but thank you.
Wonderful. So if there's no objection from Miss Mapp, then we'll move this alcohol waiver before the full board for Monday. Does that work for you?
Works for me.
Right on. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Mike.
Yeah. How it going?
Take care now.
For sure. You too. All right. Well, we have another alcohol waiver request. Do we have an SCPA rep? Do we know? Joel. I think so, yeah. Sam, right? Our friend, our intern, legal intern, Sam. This is the important work you do in policy committee in large school districts.
Joe, I'm going to need you to accept the All right, I think here he comes now. So
Yes.
there you go.
All right.
Joel?
Thanks for doing that. I couldn't figure out why you guys couldn't hear me.
all good.
Yeah, so I'm the one that's asking for the alcohol waiver for the SCPA. So we did this an event that is a benefit for the Starshine Hospice through Cincinnati Children's Hospital. We did this event last year, and we plan to do it again. Last year, we were able to raise several $1,000s for the organization. So what our plan is it's a local musicians will play, and we do like a raffle to raise money for it, and then the alcohol sales will actually raise money for the hospice as well. It was very successful last year, so we're excited to do it again.
Awesome. It is a very, 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 very excellent program you're raising that money for. So thank you for doing that. I can't imagine having to, take them up on that program. Also, if you need any extra bands, feel free to email me. I got a really cool band that would like to play maybe. Miss
Hey.
Matt, do you have any questions for Joel?
I do not.
All right, Joel. Well, pending any word to the contrary, then we'll move this ahead. It'll be on the board agenda for Monday, and we'll look forward to the approval for your event.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Great, appreciate you. Thank you. All right, well, no, we're done. No, we're not. We have a few policies that we move forward. So those of you who tuned in last time will recall that we had a discussion about moving the June meeting, which is why we're meeting again in May. There are a couple policies we really wanted to talk about. And so we're going to move up the agenda here. We have policy 1130, which is a conflict of interest. Board member Lindy has led on this discussion. So we'll turn it over to him when we get there. A brand new, potentially artificial intelligence policy, which, is terrifying. And you people have not seen Terminator enough times or The Matrix. But we'll talk about that when we get there. But more importantly, we have a very special guest. I'll put on my glasses again. Dr. Williams, come on up. Dr. Williams, we're honored to have the principal of Hughes High School, and Dr. Williams and I go way back and did, I think, a lot of good sort of public health sort of things together. You can come up here, come sit up with us. Yeah. Before she went back into the schools where she belongs in front of young people. So Dr. Williams, you'll recall if you watched last time, General Counsel Hoying kind of gave us an update on a program they had piloted. Good to see you. Piloted at Hughes High School that seems to be going pretty good. And sort of inspired us to look at our cell phone policies and change them up or tighten them up to give other schools the ability to do what you've done that I'll let you tell folks about. But then also, of course, the governor signed something and a wonderful photo opportunity that he took to say that schools should have tighter policies around cell phones. So whatever. And so anyhow, we opened the books up. We had already opened them up though, but I'm going to turn it over to you unless you want to give, if I didn't give good backstory.
No, that's it. And just remind Dr. Williams to turn your microphone on. And we thought it'd just be kind of a conversation. I know the board had some
Perfect.
questions about the experience at Hughes. We don't have anything formal planned in terms of a presentation, but Dr. Williams, maybe you could talk a little bit about what Hughes did this year, and then the board members may have questions as well.
Sure. Yeah. And
Okay, so just a little bit before we went to cell phone free school day, what we were experiencing. What we were experiencing through cell phones, through several social media platforms was cyberbullying. Students not only communicating with one another, but filming students. And then students receiving those pictures and videos of them eating, walking through the halls, sitting in class, on social media. Their parents seeing videos of them showing up on social media platforms, and these students had never consented or even participated. One instance in particular sticks out to me. This student didn't even have social media on purpose to protect their social emotional health because they had had some traumatic experiences with bullying. We also were seeing negative communication that started summertime, weekend, continued through the school day. We also experienced false information being shared with students, airdropping of threats in the building or in the community that weren't real. We even had a student receive a text message in her math class that her sibling had died, and it wasn't true. Needless to say, she tore that classroom up. So when we started communicating with our families, hadn't gotten to how we were going to actually implement it, but just surveys to our families. What are you experiencing? Surveys with our students. What are you experiencing? Surveys with our teaching staff. How are cell phones impacting instruction? And then we started looking at options that schools were using across the country, from cell phone lockers to a cell phone turn-in system to Yonder pouches. The reason that we went with Yonder pouches is a real low-tech system. If you are familiar with the magnets that are used for anti-theft in stores, it's the same technology. Powerful magnets will release it, and it just basically clamps shut. It's a really thick fabric, so you can't see through it. In order to get into it, you could cut it. There are tons of videos on YouTube on how to break it open. All that's out there. What we saw from our students, because we have such a strong system of monitoring, is that they were okay with their cell phones being locked up because they keep it with them. They're not turning it over to the office. They don't have to leave it in a locker. They keep their cell phone with them. Power it off, place it in the Yonder pouch, close it up. This year, we had about 30% of the Yonder pouches. Students learn from YouTube how to break them. But what we did, and so strong with our family support, is if you break your Yonder pouch, you have to voluntarily turn it in for end of the day pickup. And we had like a real low-tech system of envelopes that had name and grade on it. And it was placed in that grade level bin, and they receive it at the end of the school day. If they don't voluntarily turn it in and they're found with their cell phone and in use, then it's held for family pickup. Not necessarily parent, any adult family member can come up and retrieve the cell phone. That was enough of an inconvenience for our families that you didn't see it happen again. Do I think that students still had some cell phone on them somewhere? We found them in shoes. We found them but it still met the purpose. They dared not take their cell phones out during instruction and during our academic school day. The feedback from our teachers, I'll never teach in a cell phone school again. It makes that big of a difference. We saw in our freshman class alone, a 36% reduction in first semester failures because they were that much more engaged. Actually, our freshmen had the lowest failure rate in the building this year. Y'all know anything about ninth grade? That's the biggest failure year. They failed big time. So the fact that they had the least amount of failures just showed the increase in engagement. We also saw a drop in our fights. There's no way to communicate of how to meet up and get that done. What we did see an increase in were the gaggle reports on potential dangers in the building because they weren't using their cell phones. They used their CPS laptops but still we got notification, and then we could act and prevent that from even occurring, because that communication, who all was involved on the Google Doc, the Google chat, that report would go to every administrator in the building. So that still was a win, because now we could get ahead of it.
Thank you. So we'll turn to my colleagues first, and we'll turn to Mr. Lindy. He's on, correct? Listening. So see if he's got, what's that? Okay. Well, if he wants to just, yeah. So Mr. Lindy, if you're watching and you want to ask questions, feel free to let Rob know. He'll take care of you. So thank you. That freshman data was shocking and really amazing. So I'll turn it to Ms. Mapp to go first. I'll just say, yeah, I've grown to hate my cell phone. And you know, I can imagine if I had been that age. I found enough ways to distract myself and get in trouble at that age. I'm grateful beyond gratitude that I didn't have this thing. So I'm tempted to get a pager again and give like 4 people the number. So thank you for your leadership, and Ms. Mapp. I have a few questions, but I'm sure you'll cover some of them. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Williams, for sharing this. This is impressive data that you've shared. I'm definitely in support of making sure that we have a policy to regulate our cell phone and electronics use. I do have a question, and maybe you can expound more on this, because I was aware of the challenges that was happening with mental health. Can you expound and elaborate a little bit more about how you've seen students improve with the mental health aspect, maybe how counseling support or teacher support was available to ensure that that was available to the students in relationship to not having access to the cell phones? And then the other question is around safety. I know that there's the counterclaim about why we should have access, or the students should have access to cell phones in terms of any safety related issues. How have you all found a way to kind of combat against that?
So on the first part, for the social emotional, what this policy and cell phone free has allowed us to do is to prepare, not keep information from our students, but prepare for information. Unfortunately, this school year, we had a 10th grader at Hughes that passed away suddenly, nonviolent, but we were able to get our counselors and support from the district's mental health team to come to the school. Our 10th graders are going to need some help. She's been here since the 7th grade. Our teachers are going to need some help. So we were able to quickly, within 30, 45 minutes, get it together. It wasn't a day of keeping this from students and teachers throughout the building. We're talking about 4 teams of teachers are going to feel this impact, administrators, counselors, and we could really formulate around it and our students. And so I think that it helps us in that area. It doesn't stop all social media interactions of bullying. We still get reports, especially on a Monday, from things that happen over the weekend, but it has greatly reduced it in the schoolhouse. Another thing that we've done early on last school year as we prepared for it, and with our PTSA, made agreements that when families call the school for their student, no questions asked, we believe you, we're going to get your student. When a student comes to the office and asks to use the phone, no questions asked, they get to use the phone. You don't get to ask them why they're calling home. They get access to the school phone immediately. They know that they can use their counselor's office for it, our nurse's office, and main office. Also, all school counselors, school psychs, nurse's office, main office, all have magnet releases, so that students don't have to come to the front entrance to get it open if we need to get to their cell phone for an emergency. So there are magnet releases in all of those locations. And we've had good success with that. And sharing with our families. We trust you to know when you need your student, and we won't interfere with that.
Thank you for that. I think that it sounds like that really helps create that buy-in and support from the family to know that they'll still be able to have communication with their child or children, and that you all are on board and making sure that the efforts work out well.
Mr. Moreski.
Go for it, yeah.
Hi there. I am a block away.
All
And so
right.
I'll be happy to ask my question in person if there's time, and if not, I can ask it right now.
If you're a block away, I can ask mine if you want to wait till you're here.
I really appreciate that. And just let me apologize to everybody for running behind this morning. I'm turning into the parking lot momentarily.
Hey, it's all good. Grace comes free, Ben. Take your time. So yes, Ms. Mapp did ask one of my questions, and you ended up answering a couple of my other ones in your answer. So thank you for that. I think what the questions were essentially about if they needed to use the phone and like what the process was if they had to use it, because in this day and age, again, as much as I might hate this thing, kind of tethered to it, and I do need it, at times. So answered that, and then I had some questions about if the Yonder was at home, but you answered that when you were presenting, because they take it home, right? Okay. So it's theirs. They do not pay for it. So what is then, okay, so that, I think we got it. What is like the cost for a Yonder
They are $18 each.
each? Okay. Okay.
They are much cheaper than the cell phone lockers.
Yeah.
The cell phone lockers, for one classroom is $550.
Okay.
And that also requires students to keep up with keys.
Mhm.
It would also require loss of instructional time to take it out of the locker, then put it back in a locker in the next classroom. That was some of the drawbacks in that when we were looking at it. We do have some Velcro open Yonder pouches for some of our students with medical devices that need to get access to it. So they can open it up with the Velcro, and it is loud. You cannot do it discreetly. So when they need to open it up for medical apps, life-saving medical apps that they need, it is very apparent that they're going into their pouch and accessing life-saving apps that they need.
Right on. And you all, just for my own edification then, did you use your school budget for these?
So we use Title I funds.
Got it.
Through social emotional learning,
Yeah.
and use just the mental health data on the implementation of Yonder in New York City schools.
Cool. No, so thank you so much for the presentation, and as this is policy committee, our purview is this cell phone policy. And we just wanted to hear about this, I think, because it influenced some of the changes we made. Because none of this would say in this proposed red line version we have of 5136 that, all schools are going to have Yonders. Essentially, it says if schools want to have a policy that restricts cell phone usage, that it is applied uniformly across the board, which is, I think, like the biggest change to this right now. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, interim superintendent or general counsel or assistant general counsel or whoever, other schools have seen and heard tell of the success you've had, and that the students actually like it as well and want to maybe do it themselves. And so as such, I think that inspired us, right? And then our general counsel, who was way ahead of the governor's photo op, about, changing up some of this. Thank you. So back to the policy for now, but then when Mr. Lindy gets here, if he has questions, then for Dr. Rich, he can hang out if you want, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Does the interim superintendent have questions?
Just a comment. I too appreciate Dr. Williams. She did agree to come and share at the district-wide LSDMC meeting about this and a few other wonderful things happening at Hughes. And there were lots of questions and lots of interest. So thank you.
Our students even made a song about Yonder pouches. So, and it was not negative. They talked about in the song improving grades, actually listening to their teacher for the first time,
Yeah.
completing assignments. But it was a cute little song.
It definitely makes you more mindful. I've started putting mine away at a certain time when I'm at home and not going near it again until I go to bed. And it's absolutely helped. So stay up here though. Here he is. I was just going to start like telling jokes or something. Mr. Lindy, ladies and gentlemen, our third member of the policy committee. Welcome. And then we can talk about the policy. But yeah, Mr. Lindy, Dr. Williams is here. If you have any questions.
The weakest link comes last. I was gonna say I went to the wrong room in addition to being late from work. So that's a
You should have
twofer.
seen the start of this meeting. We're all giving grace today.
No, I really appreciate the presentation. I listened with great interest. I keep thinking about my time as a teacher, which was before before smartphones anyway, and before social media for sure. And I can only imagine how incredibly disruptive and challenging it is. I think that you may have addressed this too, Mr. Morosky, that the policy under consideration would be one that says schools pick, but if they pick, have a uniform policy. Yeah, I think that kind of moots the question I have, which is I think, we'll hear from some educators, well, I use it in my classroom and I find it really helpful. And from someone who's had this experience with Yonder, I just would love to hear how do you respond to that argument, given the experiences you all have had?
Our students having one-to-one device kind of alleviates that from being a concern, because we do have one-to-one devices, even with middle school next year, having the computer carts, any thing that our students need online support for, any of the apps are available for students. So we have not seen any breakdown in instruction due to the use of the Yonder. What we did have to work around is we have a multimedia class where we needed to take pictures. Okay, and so we did, the teacher had a release magnet and the students were outside of the building taking pictures. And then the teacher was responsible for making sure that they went back in the pouch and closed up when they went back into the building.
And then I'll turn it over to the council's office. Aside from what Mr. Lindy just reiterated and what we're talking about, that the biggest change here is that it says schools can have the power to do what they want to limit the use, but it has to be uniform. The only other, I think, significant maybe change is a reference to board policy 7550, which is use of district-owned equipment, and then sort of a more robust definition of what an electronic communication device is, inclusive of smartwatches, things like this. Is there anything y'all would want to add?
No, that I think summarizes the changes that are recommended now. I will say that in addition to the governor making a statement about this, there is some new revised code that has been passed, not effective yet. That directs schools with respect to a cell phone policy. Actually, our intern, Mr. Farrar, did some research on this week. There's some ODE recommended language that we expect in the next couple of weeks, I think. So after we see that recommendation, we may have some additional recommendations for this policy. But at this point, the changes you described are what we're recommending.
ODE still exists?
ODEW.
ODEW, okay. And so that would then just be sort of a perfunctory kind of, here's the language that has to be in there sort of thing?
That's right. We're waiting to, I'd like to see what they
Great.
suggest as policy
Okay.
language. Yeah.
So we cannot move this forward yet. We'll wait till then. We'll see what that is, right? Because if we're gonna have to add it anyway. Or what do you think? What's your professional opinion? Or my colleagues, do you guys have a preference either way? We could move this forward as is and then bring it back if there is ODE language we need to add.
ODE's language that
We don't know yet.
Yeah, so ODE has not released a sample policy. I guess I would actually recommend moving this language forward.
Okay.
It brings Hughes back into the fold in terms of making sure they're completely consistent with our sort of board policy. I'd recommend moving the language forward. And then if we have to make changes down the road, we can recommend that as well.
Okay, let me ask one other question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I guess if I'm internalizing this correctly, we're saying that each school has the discretion to implement a cell phone kind of procedure as long as it's uniform throughout their school, but each school has the discretion to do it the way that they want to. Is that what I'm hearing?
It does. And the other reason, again, just to bring you back to last month, the reason we recommended some changes to this language is because the former version, if you take out the red line, it says schools may not prohibit cell phone use during non-instructional time. Such that like during lunchtime, during free periods, that kind of thing, as schools were previously not permitted to do that. I think given Hughes' success with this experiment and maybe some other schools that are interested in doing the same thing, that's why we made the recommendation to at least give schools that ability to pass that policy.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So Ms. Matt, Mr. Lindy, are you all good with moving this forward?
I am good with moving it forward.
Yeah, and that would be Monday.
Mhm.
All right, Ms. Davis, you got that? All right, thank you so much, Dr. Williams. You can get on your day. Thanks for coming, hanging out with us. It's good to
Thank
see you, yeah.
Dr. for sharing this.
Mayor, I was only going to share and add, I think principals would greatly appreciate this being moved forward now, going into the month of June before they leave for vacation, so they can do their handbook work, et cetera.
Smart. And yeah, we're probably not meeting again for a little while, and it would be right at the beginning of the school year. Thank you. Smart. Thank you,
Yeah.
interim superintendent. Thank you, general counsel. The next thing on our agenda, so we'll end with the artificial intelligence. So we brought forward the potential change to the board bylaw with the conflict of interest language that Mr. Lindy had been leading on and brought to us a couple times. And then we brought it back here after we took it to the board. So depending on what Mr. Lindy wants to do, I can kick it to you and then we can see if general counsel has an update. I don't know that you would, but to go back through and Mr. Lindy, if you wanted to summarize anything from the board matters conversation or what have you, and then what you foresee as potential next steps. If that works.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Moreski. So
problem.
I'll share a document with folks here. And I sent it to, here you go. Okay, you all may have this already. There was a
this?
bunch of copies on my desk. It's also on board docs. You know, and look, I think, first point, I'm really grateful for the April meeting, the May meeting, and the June meeting, the time on the agenda to talk about this. I think it's an important topic. I think it's the right thing to do. I am committed to getting the best version of this that will pass with this board. I still like the first version I wrote best, because I think it is the clearest and I think it holds the highest bar for board member behavior. I am also on board with the second because I thought that it made some, I think, thoughtful accommodations to what we were learning about law in Ohio. And, you know, I personally think that if it's a gray area, we should do the right thing and then let someone else tell us it's illegal. But if people would feel more comfortable being a little bit more conservative, then I think the second version does that. I did have a chance between the last public board meeting and today, I did have a chance to kind of talk through this with board member Craig. And I wrote up this third version. I'm sure that it does an imperfect job of capturing what he was saying. And I don't want to speak for him because I know he's not here. But I am trying to find a version of this that will pass. And I would describe version 3 as, you know, certainly setting a higher bar than we currently have, which doesn't like we currently don't address this issue in our bylaws. So there's no bar. But I don't think this is as high a bar as the second version or the third version. But I would rather have us have something than have us have what we currently have, which is nothing. And so from my perspective, I'll support any of these three. And I would very much like to get this on the agenda for Monday, which was the timeline I think we talked about last time. But I want to put something forward that will pass. And so, you know, I'm open to all three of these. I recognize that people are probably seeing the third one now for the first time and may want a minute to kind of think about it. But that's where I am, Mr. Moreski.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. I'll let Miss Matt read the, I like the June committee meeting. And then see if she has any questions, unless she wants me to go first. Want me to go first? So the third one, thank you again, Mr. Lindy, for continuing to bring this back. The third one, aside from sort of like the opening salvo, what would be the biggest difference in your opinion? So the between 5,000 and 10,000 is different. And then the 10,000 at the bottom, right, in the last paragraph. The question I would have is, so up here in the second paragraph, the 5,000 and 10,000, then why is it just 10,000 in the third paragraph? Unless I'm not reading it right.
Yeah, so what the third version does is, first of all, as you're noting, change the dollar amounts.
Yeah.
So in the first version and in the April version and in the May version, the threshold was $5,000. The threshold in the June version creates two different zones. One zone is between 5,000 and 10,000. So that would fall within the range of the previous policy, previous proposals. And then the June version also creates a different thing that would happen if it's over $10,000. I think if you look at the June version in that, kind of zone A between 5,000 and 10,000, what it's doing is basically say you have to disclose the fact that you received those contributions and you have to disclose the amount. That's it. It says that if you don't disclose it, the board's going to vote on whether or not to strip away some assignments and leadership positions. But basically, you can accept in this one donations between $5,000 and $10,000 and vote on contracts with the individuals or organizations who have contributed that much to your campaign, so long as you disclose that and the amounts publicly.
Got it. That makes sense.
Helpful for me to talk about that last paragraph, or
no, I
it's
got it.
okay?
It makes sense.
Okay.
It makes sense. I think I just read it too quickly. And then the last one, and I just don't know, and this is just like a reminder for me. In the last meeting, it had come up, I know the question came up of, say, you received X amount, if one of these becomes, policy or whatever, an amendment in the bylaws, you receive X amount. And say it's from, I think it was Ms. Bolton that asked it, but I don't remember. But I also don't remember the answer from, like, say, a teachers union, or say it's from AFSCME. I don't know. Regardless, would that prevent you then? I think the way the question was worded, from like voting on anything involving teachers. I don't, or just like the contract with that organization.
Yeah, I actually really appreciate you flagging that. So I think that is another important difference between the June and the May. So if you go back to the May version, the lead paragraph says, it's our hope that board members will choose to recuse themselves from either votes that materially impact, well, I'm reading this wrong. No, you're right, Mr. Morosky. It's just votes that materially impact individuals or organizations. The June version is narrower than that. The June version says you can't vote on a contract with that individual organization. And I know, you mentioned teachers union, AFSCME. I certainly think those are two examples that would apply. I do think there are also lots of others.
Sure.
The example I brought up in the last committee meeting and at the board meeting is an example of a utility company that does make political contributions, and also we have contracts with and make payments to. And so this would apply across the board.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad. Yeah, because I remember the question and I didn't know what the resolution was, but that's great. Thank you. I think I'm good for now.
Okay, thank you. So just for clarification with the last paragraph, so you're saying, this is saying that if a board member does decide to vote on a contract and they have not disclosed the information about the contributions that they received, then the board is in a position to vote to remove their assignments or positions? Is that what that's saying?
Are you asking about the last
For
paragraph?
the last paragraph in the
Yeah.
June version?
So it's doing, I think this was Mr. Craig's idea, and I think it is easiest for me to think of the two paragraphs in together, where they're dealing with two different ranges of contributions. And so if the range is in that 5 to 10, the board member is supposed to disclose the contribution. If so, they're fine. If it's over 10, this is now the last paragraph. The ask is not to disclose it. The ask is not to vote on it. Basically, regardless of whether or not, or I guess, any time, what this policy would do is say that any time a board member chooses to vote on a contract with an individual or a contract with an organization that has contributed more than $10,000 to their school board campaign, it would require the rest of the board to take a vote on whether or not to take away that board member's committee assignments and leadership positions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
that makes-
it is, I think, a higher bar than we currently have.
Mhm.
I do think it's a lower bar than the last version we looked at together, for two reasons. One is it changes the dollar threshold. Now it's $10,000 instead of where we were last month with a 5,000. And to Mr. Morosky's point, it's narrowed the scope of this. So it's not issues that impact in a material way. It's contracts signed with. Now, I will say to Mr. Craig's defense, like what's really nice about the contracts piece is it's very clear. You know, there's less subjectivity about what materially impacts, what doesn't materially impact. Like, are we entering into a contract or paying them for something?
Mhm.
And I think, you know, I say this sitting next to three lawyers on the other side of me, so I should probably check what I'm saying is actually true. But I think that would make it both more applicable, even if the bar that we're holding ourselves to is a little bit lower than what it was previously.
I do think this last version, I think for me, is more clearly written where I think it spells out specifically what the expectations are for board members and how to maybe navigate that space with a more, I don't know, detailed way of like moving forward. That's just how I'm reading it, but I do think that the last version, I think it accommodates both spaces, right? In terms of setting a policy, but also just knowing that legally there's not much that we can do in terms of what the ORC already states in terms of ethics. So I think it accommodates in both spaces, but I think it also is more clearly written in terms of how I'm seeing it.
I appreciate that. Is it okay if I share another? I was just reflecting back on other topics that came up in the meetings, in the meeting last time. And one of the things that came up was, you know, hey, look, why do we need this? There is already Ohio state law on what ethics are. Why should we create something different or new when this is already clearly addressed by the state? I was really thinking about that comment. And I was thinking, you know, there are other examples where either the federal government or the state does something, but it is a floor over which municipalities can choose to do something better, or states can choose to do something better. The best example of this that I could come up with was the minimum wage. There is a federal minimum wage, and lots of states have minimum wages that are higher than the minimum wage. Plenty of cities choose, and CPS chooses, to pay its employees more than what the required state minimum wage is. I think that's a good thing. You know, I think there is no rule that says just because the federal or state government sets a bar at one point doesn't mean we can't set a higher bar for ourselves, you know, unless for some reason the state or federal government has told us we're not allowed to do that. I do not know of such a requirement. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think the idea that we have higher standards for how we treat one another, I think is a good thing.
I agree with you, Board Member Lindy, in terms of setting the bar, setting high expectations, and really putting things in place so that we can meet those expectations and hold ourselves accountable. I think where we are right now with this being a new policy, I'm in support of the policy really in whatever version, whatever version it reads. But I think that sometimes we may have to at least kind of set a precedence with something that's digestible for everybody, and then maybe we can continue to add on, at least, you know, ensuring that there is a policy in place. And I would like to defer to just counsel and ask, you know, what are your thoughts about this last version in terms of how it reads, or are there any additional recommendations or thoughts that you have around this version.
No, I mean, I think they are progressively more defensible, under the law. So the first, we shared some of the, I think, legal concerns about the first version. I think the third version, the June version, is probably the most defensible in that it essentially triggers a vote from the board on something that the board is allowed to do. They're allowed to change leadership positions or committee assignments. So.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Good, Ms. Mapp? Good, Mr. Lundy?
No, I'm interested in at some point in talking about just process for what happens next, but I don't have
Totally.
anything.
No,
to add
that's
on
where I was going.
this.
We are on the same page. So my recommendation, so to address the direct question, or I know what Mr. Lindy's sort of position is, that moving forward something that could get the board's approval. And I certainly don't have a magic wand or tea leaves, especially nowadays. You know, I don't know up from down in this building half the time. So I can't say one way or the other how this would go, but I can say, I think with some level of confidence that this third one probably has the best chance, if you want, in my opinion, as far as putting something before the board on Monday, to actually vote on. And just to be clear, and this, all three of us have done this, and more, so I'm not pointing fingers, but this is not a policy. This would be an amendment to the bylaws, correct? And it would come via resolution as an amendment. Maybe that's just like drawing straws, but I do think this third one does have the best chance. I also, Mr. Hoying, to his point, the things that it outlines are things that are in our purview to do or take away, et cetera. The bar is certainly different. I wish somebody gave me $10,000 donations. So, I do think, yeah, to your point, we started here and now it's here. I think this third one, I'm cool with saying, let's put that on the thing on Monday on the agenda.
I really appreciate your help kind of moving this through the process. I do think there's
Happy to do it.
clearly been evidence of a process as it has changed at
Yeah.
each successive committee meeting. And I appreciate your sense, Mr. Moraski, that this has the best chance of passing.
Mhm.
In its current form, version 3, would you vote to support that?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say something like that, on the record, as it were, before I actually vote. But I will say, even though I'm not an attorney, I don't know how to use legalese real good. But I will say that this one absolutely has a chance of me voting yes on it. Yes, has a chance. I've said that on the record.
There's
Far more than no.
there's a meme I'm seeing in my head that, so you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. So you're saying there's a chance. Dumb and Dumber.
that-
Now it's an even better chance.
Yeah, I was going to say the odds were not good in that situation, so I'm just
They're
trying to
better than
kickstart.
that one.
They're better than that.
No,
one.
they were not good.
Okay, so that's helpful. I appreciate it.
No, and again, I'm not trying to be, I'm really not trying to
Actually-
wishy-washy. I'm really not.
One follow-up question.
go ahead.
Is there a change we could make this one that would make it so that it would have your vote?
No, I think the big thing was the question that I brought up that I was unsure how it sort of was resolved, that one about and you addressed it real good, I thought, the material impact versus contract. That essentially, that was it, kind of it. And then I think the addition of the $5,000 to $10,000, sort of, hey, heads up, these people gave me a ton of money, heads up. And then the 10,000 being sort of I feel, yes, far more comfortable. Absolutely. No, I think this is good. No change. Recommended from me anyway.
So, and I'm just harping on this because I think the discussion was more contentious than I anticipated it being.
At the board meeting?
Yeah. And so
I thought it'd be more contentious.
I don't anticipate this being a 7-0 vote. And so if it's not going to be 7-0, I want to make sure I'm aware of where people are. And I think I know that there's a limit to what you can do on that front outside of public meetings, but in public meetings like we're in, that's why I wanted to get the most out of that I could.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from,
Happy to be more supportive in the public meeting.
well, no, there's no request. I just was trying to make sure I understood. It's what I hear you saying is there's a very good chance you'd support this. Not sure yet. But you can't think of anything that would make it stronger.
I
That are
can't.
more likely to get your support.
No, or anybody else's. I mean, like I said, I'm definitely leaning more toward this one than the previous ones. And again, looking at how it's written, I mean, we're talking about $10,000, and I said that kind of tongue in cheek about, I wish someone gave me a $10,000 donation, but that's a pretty big number for a school board race to get $10,000 from one agency. And so I think what this says, and I'm not saying this, so please don't take this the wrong way. I'm truly not trying to demean this. I think I applaud the efforts I have from the get-go, whether I like the initial version or not, doesn't matter. I think the effort to raise the bar, particularly in a state where the bar is so super low, is a really honorable, good thing to do. But I do think raising it to that 10,000 will make folks maybe more amenable to it. And even if this is just to say we believe in this, again, I'm not trying to demean. I think it has teeth. But even if it's like this is something we value, like you said in the meeting on the last time, as a board to have these strong ethics, I think is a good exercise to do, which is why I'm far more agreeable to the way this is worded, because that's something I care about. So I don't really think you could change this anymore. I think if you changed it again, it would weaken it to, again, it's a photo op. And I don't think this is. I know it's not as tough as you would like, but I think this is more than that. If you changed anything and again, I think it'd weaken it too much. Honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I have two questions. Board Member Lindy, are there some possible thoughts that you have that you would like to see reflected in this final version to make it stronger?
Nothing I haven't already shared, Ms. Mapp. I really appreciate the question. If I had a magic wand, I'd lower it back to $5,000. We want to have a lower standard, make it 2,500 to 5,000.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we have to raise it so much. I think I would like also to include recusal from discussions about contracts, not just the vote on the contracts itself, but vote on even discussing contracts where somebody or an organization has given over $10,000 to your campaign or $5,000 to your campaign. So, and I can think of many ways to make it stronger. But that's what was behind my versions 1 and 2, and I think I'm more committed to getting something that does some good work passed than nothing. And so that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, as I've shared, these are things that I do, so I do support that. I think given the feedback and just the landscape of where we are, I think it may be most advantageous to at least try to implement something as a starting point, and then, maybe seeing where we could go or how we can continue to make improvements as we move forward, if that's possible. And then my other question is, I know at the public meeting, business meeting that we had, we were expected to see the 2 versions, right? I think we only seen one, or the board only had a chance to see one of the versions. I think that was version 2, correct?
That's the one that we move forward to the board. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it would be helpful to reflect the changes over time to improving?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Is there a way process-wise that we could share all 3 versions, but somehow make it clear that the only one the policy committee is recommending is the 3rd and final?
When there is, and we can make it super clear. So Ms. Davis, this exact packet that Mr. Lindy gave us, unless you wanted to make any changes, we can give these 3 versions to the board on Monday and then have a resolution, if that's good with general counsel by Monday, that says we will adopt version 3 into the bylaws 0.0146 or whatever it is. Did I get that right? Did I get it right? I just want to know if I got it right before I checked. Is it 0146? Damn it. Yeah, close. I was closer. So does that make sense, Ms. Davis? I can't see. I have an eye and a nose problem, so I have to have my sunglasses. I apologize. I can see you all, and that's good, but I can't see this. So we will move that forward unless there are final comments. I have one final comment. Go ahead.
I can make this point in the other meeting too, but one of the arguments that came up was the Supreme Court defining and defending campaign contributions as speech. I could be mistaken, but I'm 99% sure that's from Citizens United, which is I think one of the worst possible exception of Dobbs, like one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in a generation. And like, I just don't think that's where we should take our moral compass. You know, I think that, I don't think that argument will come up again, but I was quite surprised to hear it.
No, you're correct. That is what it's from. And I think your opinion on it is also correct. And so we'll put this forward with a resolution, says the policy committee, myself included, will recommend this third version. The last thing I would just say is to Mr. Lindy, I appreciate you bringing this, taking on the chin, bringing it to public session, taking it back, bringing it back, taking it back, and bringing it back. That's not easy to do. So thank you for doing it and keeping honest about the ethics piece and the honesty piece. I know it's not easy, so thank you for amending it so many times.
There are many harder things to do, but thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, like battling the hostile takeover of artificial intelligence and the robot overlords. And it looks like our expert at protecting us from the hostile robot takeover, Jeremy, come on up to the stage, my friend. And just a reminder for folks, I absolutely have to leave here a little before noon. I don't expect that the meeting will last another 35 minutes, but I have to go do some family stuff. So, Mr. Jeremy, it's good to have you on stage. Maybe the first time since I've been here. I don't know. Good to have you.
Probably in policy.
Probably. Awesome. Love it. So, General Counsel, we're going to turn it over to John Connor. Mr. Connor.
Sure. All right. So from the last policy committee meeting, I know there was several different areas of discussion. So I did put together a real quick update from the task force. I know that was something that we were interested in. And before we even start with that, I thought it might be good to frame the conversation a little bit around kind of the policy development piece of this and what we're talking about, because AI encompasses such a big thing, right? Kind of to your point, everything from just a chat bot or things that we've seen for a decade plus, all the way up to Skynet. Hopefully we don't have to pay James Cameron for using the term. But it kind of goes across a wide spectrum. The biggest two areas, though, I think that we're really looking at are like the commercial use of things like ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, which are really language generative AI. It's a fancy way of saying that it's basically going to talk to you the way you would talk to it. So it uses a lot of different algorithms to come up with a way just to respond to you that sounds like it's a person. The other end of that spectrum, the second one is more towards the really complex AI that sits on top of data and a lot of information sources and has to make decisions based on the patterns it sees. So that's the distinction between the two. And really what we're talking about when we refer to AI right now in this context is the first one. It's not so much that it's making decisions for anything or it's trying to decide the best course of action. It is basically just giving you the most likely set of information based on the question you're asking. So that's what the task force is really focused on, is that first type. There are hundreds of resources, and I think Dan shared, or legal counsel shared a number of those with you last week, but there's really three that the task force has leaned into pretty heavily. That's the Council of Great City Schools AI Readiness Checklist, the teachai.org Schools Toolkit, and the Innovate Ohio AI Toolkit. So they've not followed, and we haven't been following any one of those to a specific, task list, but trying to pull the best from all three, as they're pretty representative of some common ground. So this comes from the Innovate Ohio AI Toolkit. So this is where we started, one of the areas that the task force started with, and looking at kind of how do we even start this conversation, right? So we evaluate the current landscape, identify the district goals, try to align the use of AI to those goals, and then get our feedback from there as to what does this mean for CPS. Next slide. This goes to the CGCS's readiness checklist. So we took some of the first parts of it, looking at the 6 areas. We took the first 3 and started surveying the actual constituents and stakeholders that would be in those areas. So like the technical readiness was primarily to the IT team. The security readiness was for our cybersecurity and our physical security team, and the executive readiness just to get a state of where do we feel that we are, what do we know about AI, those kind of things. You can see the other 3 areas below that will be to be done. Next slide. So within those 3 areas that we've completed some of the initial surveying for, you can see what it was asking about. And then on the bottom, those were the additional areas that the respondents, as well as just were things that were not responded to, are areas that we identified as the initial needs for us to establish our framework for AI going forward. And of course, across all of this, like I said, we're kind of building that stakeholder by each of the groups that needs to respond. So there's additional input from general users needed. I know there was a question around who is the AI task force comprised of. I know we said we didn't need names, but it was still the easiest way to put it together. But so you can see it is about half teachers and about half administrators. And those go across a variety of disciplines. It is a little heavy towards the tech side for right now. Next slide. So with that, what we would see as next steps would be to continue our readiness assessment, going through kind of the task lists and determining where the district is and how the steps we need to take to become AI ready. Again, talking more about the first area, which is the AI tools, not so much building an AI. Assess the opportunities for collecting additional stakeholder feedback, and then beginning to create draft policies for staff student use, as well as guidelines to build off of those policies. Identifying the recommendations for the AUP revisions, and then develop training plan. So that's just kind of the short version. I know all that goes into the question, as well as what would we think of as a timeline, right? So to that, the most likely, like again, for what we're looking at, we think a policy, there was a question of whether a board policy was needed, was also brought up. And I think from the task force, as well as myself, I do believe that's something I would encourage that we look at to get an established first step, really around defining the ideologies that we would recommend for students and staff in the use of AI tools. So that's what we would be looking to present as a draft, and we would hope to have something potentially early next year or in the fall. And then the rest would be to follow over the school year as we develop deeper.
Cool. Is that it?
That's it.
Shelley? Thank you so much. I'll just say real quick for my part, this is great. And we'll turn it over to Miss Matt, Mr. Lindy, whoever wants to go first. But just for my part, I have one comment is I am not an expert at much, but I'm grateful to be surrounded by experts. And so you tell us what a good policy would look like that supports y'all to do this important work that I do not understand, but I do understand policy. So I look forward to seeing it. Until then, keep it up. It's been great. You got Mr. Lindy or Miss Matt?
Yeah. First question, has this presentation been shared with us on the committee, or?
No, this is the first time.
Okay,
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
but-
Yes, it was shared this morning. Should have been sent out. I don't know if it went to the committee or not.
okay. All right, thank you. Well, I'll look there because I'm not seeing it at the moment, but I do want to have an opportunity to refer back to it. You spoke about the AI tools and that being the focus. Can you just expound on that again, just for my own clarity, so I can make sure I have an understanding of what the focus is?
Yeah, so it's primarily around the use of AI tools, like the commercially available. Again, those ChatGPT, if you've heard that term. Google has one that's called Gemini. It's the type where you go in and basically ask it a question and it gives you an answer. That could be in the form of, so like Mr. Morosky's example last week with the biography. So essentially what those tools do would be to go out and find every bit of information they could about Chair Morosky, and it looks at how common some of the themes are that are stated, and it's just repeating those themes. It's not looking at the accomplishments or things that Mr. Morosky has done and then coming to the conclusion that I think it was something to the effect of like develops policy with humor or uses humor in his development of policy. It's not making that decision. It's just repeating what it's finding as a common thread that's been stated by others.
Okay,
Those kind of tools is what we're referring to.
okay. And so how are we currently using, this, or those examples presently within the district?
We have currently the students, we are prohibiting from using those tools openly, primarily ChatGPT and things without teacher, involvement. As far as adults for staffing or staff for business purposes, it's not blocked. So they're able to use it, but right now it is a little Wild West while we're developing these next controls or policies and guidance for how we can actually integrate it into academics and instruction, to improve student outcomes.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing on my end. Thank you.
So we'll put on the agenda for, I guess, geez, it's the August meeting. Ms. Davis, we'll have, if you just want to keep coming back, particularly if we're thinking maybe fall or next calendar year, and if there's no update, I don't want to take up your time. You can tell us ahead of time if there's no update, but we'll stick this on the agenda next time, just in case there is one. Do you have anything, Interim Superintendent Jeremy? Thank you, sir.
Sounds good.
I do have one final question. So I do know that you're recommending that we have a policy in place. Will you be able to provide just a sample or certain things that you would want to see in the policy for us to consider?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think that would be helpful for me, for sure. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other business from either of my board colleagues today? No. Do we have any speakers today, Rob? Come on down. You got a timer, Rob?
Yes, I do.
All right.
And Mike, if anyone else wants to speak, all they have to do is click the hand icon, and we will bring them over if anyone online would like to speak today.
Thank you for saying that, Rob. My apologies. Welcome. Morning.
My name's Karen Nimbus. I work for the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. And I had a couple questions. I'm not sure if you can answer them or if I'm only allowed to ask them rhetorically, but under the current conflict of interest policy 0141.1, it says, if a board member perceives a possible conflict of interest, it should be disclosed, and a record of such disclosure shall be recorded in the board minutes. So I'm curious where those board minutes can be found, if there's a record that any member of the public can access, or I don't know if the board has looked closely at this policy and where these disclosures are collected, but I think it would be, I appreciate being able to see those. Secondly, I wondered if the committee has considered how this proposed conflict of interest policy would impact the board's ability to vote on the ratification of a collective bargaining agreement. I think it requires 4 members of the current board of the to ratify a collective bargaining agreement, and so this could affect those percentages. I don't know if you've considered that, but I think it's an important thing to consider. And I also just wanted to say that this proposal is presented under the guise of a concern for good governance, but I believe it is actually undemocratic and it's targeted to infringe on the First Amendment rights of hundreds of individuals who donated small amounts to their union's political action committees. And that is perfectly legal under current board policy and under Ohio law. These are separate small donations made to these organizations. These are people who do not have the capacity to make contributions of $4,999 or to make contributions. Many of our members who are not making contributions directly to particular campaigns, but they make them to the union, which is their voice. And I think that this is an effort to nullify the voice of the people who made these contributions in the last election or the last several elections before this proposed policy was considered.
Thank you, Ms. Imbus.
Thank you.
And as this is a committee meeting, it's a little different than a board meeting. If you just want, Mr. Hoying, we can't, where are those housed? I'll give you, if you want to respond, you don't have to, of course. Where are those housed?
So in terms of the board policy on recording in the minutes, if there is a conflict of interest, I think that's most typically done with a recusal, that a board member would recuse themselves from that vote, and then that recusal is recorded in the minutes. That's I think traditionally how we've done that.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Linney, if you do want to take, you don't have to again, but feel free if you would like to respond to anything.
Well, I really appreciate the feedback and the comment. And I think that the one question about recusals and voting on a collective bargaining agreement and having, if I understand the question, having enough board members present who can even vote on it, I think is a really important question. And I'd say it's broader than even just a CBA vote. I think for any decision that would be required of the district, And so I think I want to credit Mr. Hoying for raising this issue. I think when we looked at the first draft, and I think as he and I were both researching kind of the way our bylaws work and the way that parliamentary procedure works, you know, the board can still vote and make a decision with the members who are present but are non-recused. So I'm probably not explaining this in the most straightforward way.
No,
but we did look at this, right?
Did, and there are other votes that require not just a majority, but a majority of the full board. What we looked at was the New Mexico policy that has a provision that says the board members will recuse themselves if there is a conflict, quote, unless the board decides that recusal will prevent the board from fulfilling its legal duty. And I think that's probably how New Mexico got around that issue, or Albuquerque got around that issue, but we just sort of raised it as an issue.
Yeah, and I think the you know, first of all, I think in our current state, I don't think that this would, you know, encourage very many board members to confuse, because I don't really think there are that many contributions that are over this size, particularly now that we've increased it to 10,000. But on the parliamentary procedure front, even if we imagine a world where suddenly many people are getting $10,000 contributions, you know, and the majority of the board or the board has to vote on a contract with that individual or organization, the board can still make a decision simply using the votes of the people who have not recused. And then even if that winds up, we're imagining a hypothetical that is pretty remote and it has never happened, would not happen under the current board. And I really can't imagine it happening very often. But even if it did, where let's say you had 4 board members who had to recuse themselves, the other 3 board members can still vote and make a decision on behalf of the organization with a 2-1 decision, with a 3-0 decision. And that's not me saying I think that should be true. That's what the bylaws and the Roberts Rules says.
Thank you, Mr. Lenny. Thank you, Ms. Imbus. Well, we appreciate certainly your feedback. And for those of you who don't know, Ms. Imbus, she's an attorney as well with Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. And if you have information that you want to send, feel free, of course. But thank you for your comments. Thank you, General Counsel. Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Do we have any speakers online? No? All right. Well, going once, going twice? 3 times? 4 times? 5? Good. I will see you all back here somewhat soon. I've always wanted